Okay, so today we are going to do a recap of what you have learned so far. Going ahead, we are going to do this time to time to make sure we do not forget as we move ahead. I'll try to do it on Sundays, of course. Uh, so first topic that we were looking at in endgames was corresponding squares or correspondence. This basically means a position of reciprocal zugzwang. Uh, Meaning is straightforward. You're putting your position opponent in a zugzwang position. Now there are primarily three types of this. So first is opposition. Everyone knows that. In this particular scenario, these three squares are key squares. Both of black will try to push white king out of those, and white king will try to get into those. Simple idea is if it's black to play, if it's white to play, then it's going to be a draw forever. But if it's black to play, then he moves to any of the sides and white king is able to get into one of the key squares. uh, so this was the first idea, opposition. Let's move on to the next. The second position is of mind squares. So if we look at this particular position, this square and this square are basically mind. What exactly it means? Anyone who steps first into the squares will lose the game. So let's say a natural instinct is move towards your pawns, right? And protect them and try to gobble up this one. So in this particular scenario, if white first moves in, uh, king d6, and white has to move. Now he can't, of course, move any of the pawns. King has to move, and he can't go any of the uh, squares and can't capture. So once he moves back, uh, king will capture on b5, and then it's a smooth sailing. He has one passed pawn, and he can go to the next one and capture this as well, and this will be smooth sailing. So the key concept is these two squares are mine. Whoever goes first and tries to protect the pawn loses. This is basically a situation of perpetually moving. So no king can make progress in this situation, and this will go on, keep on going. So this is the concept of mind squares. Okay, so third concept is of triangulation. In this particular scenario, it's white to move, so he got to move here. There are a couple of candidate moves or legal moves, and black is trying to just protect this pawn. He's just going to try to protect this pawn and try to tuck into this space. Particularly, he'll try to keep the white king out of these three key squares as of now. So we can just do a simple triangulation where if king moves away, then c6 takes and this pawn quickly promotes. So that's not possible. If king moves away and tries to come back in, then again we can just capture the pawn and these two squares are warded off. So going away is never an option for black. So let's say he tries to stay away, stick with it. King e5, and again in this scenario basically we have lost a tempo. White has lost a tempo, and in the exact same scenario, exact same position that was previously there, now it's black to move. And if black tries to go away, we can enter in one of the key squares, and black basically has to retreat. So let's take a look at the situation. So yeah, so these three squares are now out of black's reach, as well as this key square, c7. So black will have to move away, and this pawn queens. So this is the basic idea of triangulation. You move in a triangle position, and your opponent is basically uh, getting pushed into a zugzwang position. So next topic is of king versus passed pawn. In this particular scenario, it's white to play, and once the pawn is pushed ahead to b4, we need to imagine a square based out of pawn towards the end of the file he wants to reach, and in a diagonal. So this is the diagonal, this is the last square, and if you imagine this square, If the opponent's king is able to enter this particular square, either on f4, f5, e4, any of the squares, then black's king or opponent's king can reach your pawn before the pawn is promoted. In this particular scenario, even if black tries, he cannot penetrate this particular square, and hence we can safely say our pawn is going to queen. So next topic was Reti's idea. We know if your opponent has a passed pawn, he is most likely winning because of the rules of squares. If we look at this particular scenario, this is the square for black pawn, and white king cannot definitely enter this square. So will this promote? Depends. If you have couple of threats to make, then white's king can somehow approach this. Basic idea is we need to move in a diagonal fashion, making a threat that I'm going coming in to protect my pawn and queen it, as at the same time you are uh, taking a shorter path towards your opponent's pawn. Like this will never work, right? So basically in such scenarios you need to have a pawn which you can threaten with. So if we calculate king g7, uh, king definitely don't want to waste two moves. If he wastes two moves, then uh, we can definitely catch up, right? White can definitely catch up to the black pawn. So in this scenario, let's say king f7, king c6, then it's definitely a draw. So king f6, if pawn h4, instead of going towards the black pawn, we need to give it a threat, at the same time move one step closer. So king e5 is the key move. So now if pawn moves, we can defend our pawn, and if king takes, then we can approach opponent's pawn. So in this case, if king takes c6, we can go king f4, and yeah, this is simply a draw. So Reti's idea states, make a threatening move while simultaneously approaching a passed pawn. Next topic was the rule of floating squares. So in this one, you need to imagine, if let's say you have two passed pawns, one of them will promote uh, if the squares formed by the number of squares, so in this case 5 by 5, reaches till the end of the board, then one of the two pawns will get promoted no matter what. So in this case, black's king cannot come to the aid of these pawns, but if let's say it's white to play and we go king b5, then this pawn will run away. So this will be the square it forms, and black's king cannot enter this square. So either this pawn will queen, or this pawn will queen, no matter which he approaches. So the key idea here is you can go queen king c4, but then king can enter, try to protect. If you push, then I can simply gobble up the pawns, and if king tries, then again we can move with the other pawn. So let's play this out. And again same scenario, king cannot enter, and this is going to die. So floating squares idea is, imagine a square, if it reaches till end of the board, then one of the two pawns will queen. In similar situation, let's say in this situation it's going to be a draw. Why? Because right now there are 5 squares in between the pawns, and this is going to be the square that it forms, and it's not reaching till end of the board. In this scenario, black can hold it, but the key idea, sorry, white can hold the game, but the key idea is king c5. And now if you approach, then I can come in. The same idea. Now black king has to move away, and if a5, then white king can. The next was three connected pawns. So in this situation, white is winning, but this is particularly because black king just simply cannot move these two pawns. If black moves to any one of them, then these two squares are occupied, where black king cannot enter, and the pawn will promote. But this is a very specific situation. If even a single pawn is missing or black's king is able to move in, then in that scenario it's definitely winning for black. If there are three passed pawns, it's definitely winning for that side, except this particular situation. So in this particular scenario, the key move is king b1. Why? Like, if any of the three pawns moves ahead, like black is in zugzwang, he cannot move his king. If he plays any of the pawn, then now none of these two pawns can move ahead, and uh, it's basically a position of zugzwang, and black needs to move, and once he moves the king, white will win. So let's see what happens if a3, then king a2, and same scenario, these two pawns now cannot move or they will get captured, and black's king is stuck. He moves and pawn will promote. This is a very specific scenario. If you remove even a single pawn from this equation, then it's going to be winning for black no matter what. So three passed pawns, bet on them, but three passed pawns, always bet on them. But if you have a specific situation like this, then white can. Next we looked at simultaneous queening. In this scenario, if it's white to move, white can hold this position. We need to make sure of a particular maneuver where we need to push black king in front of the pawn. How we do it? Simple steps, and king moves away, we move in, king c1, trying to push the pawn, but then we can come even closer. Again, black king tries to promote, but now it's a check. If king moves in front of the pawn, we'll bring our king in. If not, we threaten the pawn. King tries to protect, again a check, and now he has to move in front of the pawn. And that's how this same maneuver we can do to try and bring our king in. We need to continue this maneuver till our king reaches to the pawn and we uh, kill the pawn. Now, this scenario works for center squares, okay, and for the king files. If the pawn is on f2, c2, a2, or h2, it's a draw. Uh, Black's king is basically able to hide in one of the a1 or h1 squares and is able to survive. So let's look at the situation where, yeah. So this is going to be a draw because okay, I forgot to move. So white queen can try to stop, but once this happens, it's going to be a situation of perpetual check. And king will go in. Now black, the queen cannot capture the black pawn, and if queen moves, king will move out, and if king somehow if you try to bring the king in now, then of course it's a draw. There are no legal moves. So in cases of corner pawns or the bishop file pawns, it's a draw. King hides on exactly h1 or a1. In other scenarios, it's winning for white.